consenting to the recording, retention, and use of this session. So just be aware that the recording has started. Okay, next. So this is our agenda for today. We've flipped the agenda from the order we usually do it in. So today we're going to have some presentations from some of your colleagues talking about retention, persistence strategies that involve a variety, orientation, and a variety of other methods. And then Amanda will come on with some updates, and then we will talk about the next webinar. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mary Wilson to introduce our presenters.
Thank you, Christine. So good morning, everybody, again. So we have a wealth of knowledge that is going to be shared today about some best practices on retention and persistence. And we have 3 agencies that are going to present today. We have Altoona. I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback.
Okay.
Is there echo now?
Can everybody mute? If you're not muted, please check and mute yourself.
Thank you. We have Altoona Area School District Adult Education Program. Tina Swineford, Adult Education Director, will be presenting. We have Intermediate Unit 1, Rachel Zilkowski, Program Admin, as well as Angela Kenneth and Chelsea Snyder, who will be presenting today. And we also have Project of Easton, Aaron Roman, Director of Programs, who will be presenting today. So first up will be Tina from Altoona. And Tina, I'm going to let you go ahead and take it away.
Okay, good morning. Thank you. What I'd like to share with you today is our journey on interventions that led to better retention. We, like other programs, struggle with getting people to persist long enough to reach their goal and meet our outcomes. Next slide, please. So last January at our staff meeting, we took a hard look at where we were with enrollment mid-year. We were at 45%. Our target number of students were contracted was 100. We had, of those, we had an additional 25 that were reportable, so they had not met the 12 hours needed to be enrolled. We didn't like that 25. We thought that was a very high number. Of the 70 that were in eData, that comprised about 36%. And we knew how excited they were to get started in our program. We knew how hard we worked to get them to the point of starting classes, and to have 25 remaining that were not enrolled was hurting us and it was hurting them. So we took a hard look at the second quarter adult instructional hours report, because that first quarter, you kind of have the luxury of having rollovers. So it's a little bit unclear how many were new, but that second quarter report from October, December, those are brand new people. We had 25 brand new people accessing our services, and only 8 had met enrollment. So we knew there was a problem. What happened to the other 17 who were so ready to get started? And how, the big question was then, how are we going to meet our 75% enrollment goal by the end of March if people aren't persisting? We can't keep going at 8 people per quarter. Next slide, please. So this led to additional questions. We knew we had to dig deeper. We took another look at that instructional hours report to see who those 25 were. We talked about the ones that we knew and the reasons why they stopped. But then there were still many who we didn't have a reason. They were ghosting us when we were trying to call them back, see what we could do if they needed their class schedule changed. Of those 25 reportables who stopped attending, 19 of them we found stopped attending at the 7-hour mark. That's about 2 or 3 classes in. So what we did was we took the range of those 25 people. Their hourly range was anywhere from 2 hours to 11, and we found 19 of them were in that sweet spot of 6, 7 hours, they stopped coming. So the new question was, what's happening at that 6, 7 hour mark that's making them say, well, this might not be for me. I'm not coming back. 17 of those 19 were high school equivalency goals, and 9 of those, about half of those, were youth. So that helps us to understand that demographic a little bit better. We know that we need to approach them with a little bit more technology, a little more hands-on. So that helped as well. We had an honest reflection at that staff meeting. I had everybody make 3 columns on their paper. How does it look like? How does it feel like? What does it sound like? If you were the learner coming into your classroom on that first day, during that first week, what are the sights, sounds, feelings that you're having? So from there, they brainstormed, we discussed, what's everybody doing well? Then let's all do it. What could we improve? Then let's all adjust it. So we knew the next step was my goal of this meeting was to identify 3 concrete adjustments, 3 that we could put in place with minimal effort that could produce optimal results. And we went through that discussion of, well, we can't control what barriers come up for them. No, we can't. We can't control how they're feeling. Not always. We can control what we do. And if that would bring back even half of those 25 who stopped, then we're back on track with our enrollment, with our EFL, and with catching those people before they decide it's not for them. So next slide, please. So those 3 things that we put in place as a result of that discussion were adjustments to our welcome routine. We created these new learner check-ins, and we had attendance motivators. We had attendance motivators before, but we were going to be more clear with it with the students. So the welcome routine was created and headed up by the teachers. They met and they decided a text from the teacher before that first day might be nice. That text is very simple and it says, hey, I'm Tina and I'm glad I'm going to be your teacher. I'm glad to meet you tomorrow at 9 a.m. This is the best way to reach me. Shoot me a text if things change or if you need to adjust your schedule. Otherwise, I'll see you tomorrow at 9. We also have a welcome folder for them with a new notebook, a new pencil, contact information, and then that is where they're going to stay organized and put their classwork. There's an intentional introduction to their classmates that first day. Each teacher does a whip around. It's a little icebreaker. Everybody introduces themselves and says something about themselves. And then the basics, where to sign in, where to find supplies, and a group lesson so that everybody is learning something together, so that that new person isn't feeling like they're behind the 8 ball with work. The other thing we did was new learner check-ins. For this, the student support coordinator headed this up. For me, it made the most sense for her to do this part because she's the person who they've already established a relationship with during orientation. So a new learner check-in is her at the 7-hour mark after 2 or 3 classes, talking to that person one-on-one for 5-10 minutes. And I'm going to show you the form we use in a minute. That check-in is at that sweet spot of 7 hours so that we can check in with them and see how it's going. And then the attendance motivators, that's headed up by our data quality specialist. These are just little things around the building that make a big difference. She is promoting the weekly attendance drawing with the tickets and following through with the gift card. It's just a little $5 Sheets card and hanging the names of the winners in where everybody can see it. We put in place a refer a friend. If you refer a friend to our program and you each hit 15 hours, we'll give you each a gift card. Name on the welcome board, welcome to class Diane, you'll be in Tina's class today. We're happy to have you. And then just some flyers and signs around the building to promote the importance of attendance. So next slide, please. So I know it's hard to see, but this is the new learner check-in form that our student support coordinator uses when she meets with the new learner at that 7-hour mark. She asks how class is working out. Is the time working for your schedule? How are the materials? Is it too easy about right, too hard? You know, that's important for the teacher to know because we're just getting to know these people. And if it's too hard, they're not going to come back. If it's too easy, they're going to feel it's a waste of time. So we got to get that right. Are there any issues, concerns? The student support coordinator already addressed barriers at orientation. So this is a follow-up time for her to continue to address that and continue that discussion. So a copy of that completed form then is given to the teacher so that the teacher knows what adjustments need made, if any, or if it's going well for that person, then that's reassurance for the teacher. And then the last slide, please. Our results. So we're very pleased with these results. I told you when we started this after the second quarter in January, our reportables were 36% and our enrollment was at 45%. By the end of the third quarter, our reportables decreased to 27% and our enrollment increased to 74%. And then mid-June, we were on track to meet enrollment, and by the way, we did by the end of June, and our reportables continued to decrease. So those are just some simple interventions that made a big difference in our student persistence and retention. And we continue to have those systems in place, and it continues to have us on the right foot with enrollment and low reportable numbers. So I hope that helps.
Thank you, Tina, for such wonderful information and sharing some of your attributes that are very helpful to your program enrollment and ensuring that students do persist and be retained. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You're getting
Absolutely.
kudos in the chat, and also
Oh.
people are clapping their hands for you. So
Oh, you guys are sweet. Thank
Awesome.
you.
thank you.
And as a disclaimer, we will have time at the end of all the presentations for any questions that the field may have based off these presentations. And also the contact information will also be available to you as well. And next up is IU1. So Rachel, Angela, and Chelsea, you're on.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Rachel Zilkowski. I'm the program administrator here at IU1. And I asked Angela and Chelsea, who are two head coordinators, to join me for this presentation because they're really the ones who are implementing the strategy, the two strategies we're going to talk about today. So if you can move to the next slide, please. Just a little background on our program. We are located in southwestern Pennsylvania. We serve 4 counties: Fayette, Greene, Washington, and Westmoreland. And we have a contracted enrollment in our direct service grant that's 497 students. Our area is mostly rural. I always say it's a rural area with rural cities. And we also have a very large geographical area that we serve across the 4 counties. Just to think of our student population, about 1/4 of our students are ESL students and 3/4 are ABE or HSE students. Although this year we're seeing a drastic change in that, but I was looking at the data from last year. So Angela and Chelsea are going to talk about 2 strategies that we put into place that we have found to be helping with getting students enrolled in our program. The first strategy is our monthly county student support coordinator meetings. We call them our triage meetings. We established these actually as part of our enrollment plan that we had 2019 and 2020. And we kind of moved away from them during COVID simply because we were all talking so much over Zoom during the COVID time. But we put it back into place last year. So Angela's going to talk with you about that. And then Chelsea participated in the LEAD project last year. And one of the things that she worked on, or the project that she worked on in LEAD, was creating an onboarding process for our remote classes. Throughout last year, we noticed in our PIT data that our remote classes tended to have lower retention rates compared to our face-to-face classes. So we started onboarding last spring. So I'm going to turn it over to Angela, and she's going to talk to you about our monthly meetings that we have with our student support coordinators. Next slide, please.
Hello, everyone. One of the things that we did implement in our program was having our student support coordinators engage in our basically triage meetings, and the purpose was to have the opportunity for the student support coordinators to talk together and to help increase our intention by identifying what barriers we were seeing when students first started that may not have necessarily been addressed at the time of orientation, and also to increase student enrollment and then provide some additional opportunities for our staff to be able to engage in some meaningful dialogue about what was going on with our students. Next slide, please. So how they work, basically, all of our classes, just to give you some background, is all of our classes do have a student support coordinator assigned to them. And their role, of course, is to monitor attendance, look at potential barriers that may be ongoing, and also to provide transition support. Now, what our meetings look like is our student support coordinators are meeting monthly according to the county where their assigned classes meet. So our discussions then focus on new student attendance, the enrollment status of the new students that are coming in, and then any strategies that we've utilized to re-engage any students who were only attending once or twice. And we review that information with all of our students that are coming in all the classes. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Yes. Did it not forward?
Oh, okay, yes, I did.
It
I'm
did.
sorry.
Oh,
It just
okay, no, that's
did it
okay.
on mine. You know, technology. But anyway, so how it works, the meetings are generally held at the end or early beginning of the month to determine about any students who may have who started classes a little bit later, to see if they enrolled in the following month. So for example, we're going to discuss October enrollments at the end of this month, beginning of December. We have our meetings scheduled. And then we document all the information on a form that is then reviewed by our administrator, Rachel, as well as the PIT team members. Next slide, please. And then some of the benefits that we have seen from this, the student support coordinators have a set time where they're not doing anything other than looking at those students who may have come to class only once or twice and allowing us to have some discussion about what we can do to help them. So the communication overall has improved between all of our staff members and particularly our student support coordinators. And it also provides qualitative data that we're able to review during our PIT meetings. Next slide, please. Chelsea's going to go ahead now and talk a little bit about onboarding for our remote learners.
Good morning, everyone. So during LEAD last year, one of the focuses was to choose something at your agency or your organization that you were wanting to focus on, and retention was a big thing for us. Like Rachel had mentioned, one of the things that we had noticed was our remote classes had a much lower retention rate than our in-person classes, but they were much more in demand than our in-person classes at the time. So we wanted to try to figure out something that was going to help increase this, make things easier for our remote instructors, and kind of just have a more seamless approach to the instructional process. So we came up with the idea of doing a onboarding session for these learners, where we basically go over the Zoom access, the controls, we test internet speed and kind of troubleshoot any problems before the students start their very first remote instruction. Next slide. So how the process works, we basically incorporated this into our PIT team so that it was something we were actively looking at every other month when we meet. But we did organize a team that handles the onboarding. So we do one session in the morning, one session in the afternoon, and one session in the evening. Since those are the times that we offer our remote instruction, we kind of tabled it to look like that so that students would be able to make it on any of those times. So once students complete orientation and assessment, if they're interested in attending remote instruction, they would then sign up for one of those onboarding sessions. We use the program Pick Time, so all of our staff have access to it. And that's exactly where students can sign up. And in there, it's a quick sign up. We're able to just put their phone number and email to contact the student and send the Zoom link for onboarding. Then, like I said, during the onboarding session, it's very quick. Typically between 15 and 20 minutes, sometimes not even that long if it's not a busy session, or if a student is really tech savvy. But we basically go over all of the Zoom controls, how to use some of the reactions like raising your hand or giving a thumbs up. Some of our instructors use Zoom polls to assess understanding. So they'll put in questions to assess understanding. So we go over that. We make sure that they're comfortable using the chat feature. And then we also make sure that their internet speed is appropriate so that there's not connectivity issues once the instructor starts classes. And then finally, we make sure that all of the communication tools that we use, which is basically Remind and Google Voice, are working for the students so that they're able to get their Zoom links and class communication. Once that is completed, we just fill out a quick report. So it's a Google form that we created that then gets uploaded to their student case folder. Next slide. Some of the benefits that we've seen from that is just that it eliminates a lot of problems. So what we were having is students, I think, getting frustrated because instructors were taking time to troubleshoot technology issues. Some students had never participated in an online class before, so they weren't sure how to access the chat or how to use some of the reaction tools when a teacher asks a question. And then, like I said, it also has helped to ensure that the connectivity issues are good. So that if when we do that onboarding, we can't connect with a student, it's constantly stalling out. We know that that's possibly not the best fit for the learner. And then you can see on the very last bullet there that it has increased our retention rate from 63% to 71%. And we only implemented this in April of 2023, towards the very end of April of 2023. So it's been a little less than 8 months that we've been doing this. I think that's it on our slides.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, Rachel, Angela, and Chelsea, for some wonderful information. I'm very impressed, especially with the onboarding for remote learners. I hope this is also beneficial to some of your colleagues in the field. Okay.
We're getting some positive response in the chat. Yeah, Dawn, it reminds her of strategies used in the old days when we had the DLP. And she said these are, great reminders, and she's getting a lot of clapping emojis popping up. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. And on to our last presenter, Project of Easton. Erin Roman, you are up next.
Prisoner, I like that word. We actually have been working very hard on our onboarding on our retention improvement with our onliners. We are contracted for 65 adult ed through the year and also 39 with family literacy. So we're working with about 105 students. We have also seen, if you could go to next slide, please. We have also seen a huge increase in our ESL population. Currently, as of today, 65% of our students are ESL. and 35% are GED. So we're really seeing an increase in ESL. We have a wait list even right now. We start with open house. Open house consists of flyers going throughout our community of Easton and social media. About 3 weeks before open house, we open up open house about 3 weeks. Our open house is about a month before our next session begins. We are managed enrollment, which tends to help, but we are open enrollment for family literacy and youth because we are also seeing a huge increase in our youth population for our GED students. Intakes and tours are done that day. They come in, they get a tour of the classrooms, a tour of the building. They meet the teachers are there at all times and are supporting the case managers and the intake people. We offer the flyers in Spanish and multi-languages. We also have snacks, always brings them in with snacks and some waters and such. We have now had to do 2 sessions of open house for ESL. It is just too many ESL students coming in at one time. So we try to do 2 separate sessions. GED, we can do just all day. They can come in. Next slide, please. Orientation is on a separate day. Orientation, they're given an appointment for orientation at the open house. The intake is already done, but now we're going to get them in class into our building again a second time. This is done with the case manager that will follow them through. We have found a great success with improvement of retention with a student not only being very comfortable with the teacher, but also with their case manager and their student success coach as well. So orientation lasts about 3 hours long. During orientation, they meet. They will do SMART goals. They will do a self-sufficiency rubric, which I will show you what ours looks like. They do a RISIC test, which is career pathways, and taking a look at where their career pathway lies. They spend a length of time going through the student handbook page by page, so they're not just signing something and not really sure what they're looking at. We also include all of our RAC cards for our other programs that we have. We also have at Project of Easton, we not only have adult education and family literacy, but we also have emergency assistance program. We have food pantry right here. We have school age programs. So they become aware of all of the programs that we offer while they are here. And we spend a lot of time going over the explanation of program expectations. The student case manager with the online orientation, we worked much harder on that this year. We really pushed for a online one because we have found that the on-site are getting a lot more from it and we were lacking with the online. So now the student success coach will make an appointment with the student, a Zoom appointment. We go over the basic Zoom controls. We introduce them to the learning platform that we use, which is Moodle. Can they chat? Can they share screen? Can they annotate? Can they check their emails daily? Because teachers will email them daily on what's happening and usually send that Zoom link every single day just so that they know how to go through this and it's a little bit easier. The teachers email them daily as well. Next screen. The pre-testing, when they come in, again, they make an appointment with that. The appointment is given to them at orientation. We get them in. All of our tests are computer-based. We are doing computer-based CASAs, or we can do the remote CASAs if necessary. We have found a great success. We were struggling getting proctors, so we reached out to our volunteers, and many of our volunteers were more than willing to complete the CASAs, the PDE proctor certification. So we have case managers in there, data people in there, student support coordinator in there, as well as volunteers giving them that benchmark testing. Next slide. Where we really learned we needed to work a lot stronger was our student success coach and our case management. We have found that a great success now by improving in a variety of ways with our case management. Students are placed in a classroom based on their CASA scores, and then the student success coaches and case managers meet with the students based on needs assessment tiering. If they are considered a tier 1 student, we are meeting with them daily. We are checking in with them daily. How's it going? How are your barriers? What can I do to support? Tier 2, we're usually meeting with them weekly. Tier 3, we're checking in with them monthly unless they come looking for us, and then we meet with them. And I'll show you that on the next slide. Individual service plans. We started this year as well. Each student works with their student success coordinator at the beginning to create an individual service plan. And on this plan, it will work with where are your barriers? What is going to stop you? What are you struggling with? And based on their tier, that's how often we touch base with them. We keep the service plan that is pulled out every time. They're very comfortable with it. They are very comfortable with their case manager because they started with them. They have worked with them throughout, and they can come to them each and every time that they come across a new situation. Also, what we have started to do is weekly life skills sessions. We push into the classroom and talk about stress management, time management, barrier support, verbal, nonverbal communication skills. We even get into interviews, budgets, organizational skills, and goal reaching. The case manager is as much a part of their learning process as the teacher is. And case manager and teacher are very close together as well. So there is no feeling of, I'm not comfortable talking to you. And the teacher also gets to take a step away from, if a student, for example, comes in and the teacher knows they haven't eaten in the past day, we have somebody right outside the door that can go and help them, get them to the food pantry and so on. We have seen a greater success with retention because of this. Next slide. You can see our self-sufficiency rubric that we've created. It is based on food, housing, income, transportation, behavioral health, and employment. And when they meet at orientation and at intake, they can be filling out this self-sufficiency rubric, already meeting with their student success coach and realizing where they are. If they score between a 1 and a 2, we are checking in on them daily, every other day, very close. If they score between a 2 and a 3, in general, we're checking in with them as well. 1 day, 1 week, depends on where their needs are. If they're already at 4 or 5, we might be checking with them weekly or monthly, or when they're coming to us and saying, I need something. So yes, we do Zoom it all, by the way, I just got that. We also do a individual service plan. This we just started this year. This is page 1 of the plan. The plan is about 4 pages long. The student and their case manager work together on this, and they work with setting up their goals for education. If they struggle with food, if they scored on their self-sufficiency rubric of 5 on food, then we know they don't need a lot of support with that, and we can just brush over that one. So we are talking to them. We can write down and jot down, because at the end, for example, if we have an ESL student who just tested out of ESL, they're going to go to a new case manager, and we do a transitional time where they will sit with the 2 transitional time and talk it over, and they can become comfortable with their next one. And then the last slide. This is where we really hit it all home. Luckily, because we are a relatively small, teachers and case managers talk a lot, but in the classroom, teachers teach those transferable skills to relate the skills to real life. They make connections with the students that follow through after they leave. I just met the baby of a student who I had about 5 years ago, because she still stops back in to say hello. And teachers and case managers speak weekly or daily as needed regarding any new student barriers that come across. In PLCs, teachers meet with other teachers to strategize best practices with students. Teachers attend and implement professional development for student success and retention. Every single one of the teachers right now and case managers are enrolled in the Trauma Informed. That is new to PD Portal, but we're excited about. And when it really hits close to home is teachers are motivating the students, and in turn, we're seeing the students motivate the other students. If one student has not been in for 2 days, they are getting a phone call, but when they return, the students are on top of their own classmates. Where were you? You've got to get this done, because we work as a team. It's all just one big. And that was short and sweet, and I apologize.
No,
But
that was
we
very
have-
informative, Erin. Thank you.
we just have found a lot of success. I meet with the PIT team every month, and we are seeing that success continue. So we reevaluate and see. We do also do a unit incentives, the attendance certificates. We bring all 4 classes in the morning, all 3 classes in the evening together to give out a certificate for every single person who has 90% attendance for that unit, and little trinkets. We give them small gifts. They're just so excited to be standing in front of everybody getting a certificate and show their pride with that.
So I'm just gonna step in here for a minute.
Yes.
Erin, would you be willing to share your tools? People couldn't see them on that slide. They were too small on the slide. So if you would be willing to maybe email them to Mary, and then we can share them out for you or something.
I will absolutely email them to Mary. And Mary, my email is not Project of Easton, just projecteaston.org.
Okay, got it. And I'm going to actually ask if all the presenters, if you can put your email address in the chat for your colleagues, that will be great. And we'll make that correction for the recording and the PDF associated with the recording. But thank you so much, Erin. Thank you, IU1 and Altoona, for great presentations. We truly appreciate you sharing your practices, your tools, your resources with the field. And now, Christine, do we still have a couple minutes for any questions?
Yeah, I think so. I don't
Okay.
see any questions in the chat. Just a lot of kudos for everybody. People like, they want to see the tools. There was a mention that, a lot of the things that Erin talked about were, that all 3 presentations talked about were sort of strategies for people who were, they were trauma-informed strategies, because a lot of our students have a lot of barriers and trauma in their life. I think this was a comment addressed. I'm not sure. I think this was addressed to Erin. Someone loved the tiered system.
Mhm.
So that was it. I don't see any questions in the chat. Everybody's put their email. So I think we can move on and turn the webinar over to Amanda.
Okay, great.
Good morning, everyone. I had to join late. I was on another webinar. I'm sorry I missed what sounds like was some really excellent presentations. So thank you to those agencies for presenting. Just several division updates and reminders. I sent out an email a couple weeks ago with our new address, but it's on this slide for you. So we've moved. After many, many years of talking about it, it's happened. Then the second reminder is about the final expenditure reports. I'm definitely getting through them. They're mostly completed. I know some of you are still working with your advisor. I did want to point out that the funds and the FERs, each grant is its own funding, and the FERs are separate. For those of you who have more than one FER, they don't balance each other out or cancel each other out, right? So if you have an 064 grant and you owe PDE money on the federal side and we owe you money on the state side, you can't combine those two and say, oh, okay, PDE owes us 50,000, we owe PDE 70,000, so we're going to send them 20,000. That's not how it works. You have to send us 70,000 and then you will get 50,000 from us because they're separate pots of money from our side. So we have gotten a couple questions about, hey, wait a second, you said we owe you money, but you owe us money over here. So did want to clarify that. Like each FER is a separate pot from our perspective, and therefore you have to treat each one separately. Regarding the HiSET and Diploma Sender, there are still issues with HiSET accurately including all of the information in what it sends to Diploma Sender. So there are cases in which you might have students who see information in their HiSET account, but they're not seeing it in their Diploma Sender account. If that is the case, you can email Whitney Newhouse in our office and copy your advisor. In the email, include the name of the test taker and the information that is missing. Whitney has developed a good relationship with the Diploma Sender folks and the HiSET folks, and she is working to bring issues to both of their attention to see if she can get it worked out. If you have multiple students, it would be helpful to kind of have it all in one email because having multiple people with the same issue sometimes allows them to figure out where the issue is. And I guess, Christine, I did not include Whitney's email, so somebody could look that up and put it in the chat.
I'll put it in the chat, no problem.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, incentive funds. So traditionally, when there are state funds that have not been used, we award them in a grant, but the program does not use all of their state funds and either has to return them or just never gets them. The funds go back into the general pot. They don't stay with the Division of Adult Education. They don't stay in the adult ed line item. In the last couple of years, the governor's office has done something called a waiver, which allows the funds to stay with the department and stay committed to the activities for which it was originally allocated in the budget. Because the programs were significantly underexpended during the pandemic. They did these waivers to allow us to have access to those funds. The thing with these funds is they are just one-time funds, right? They're old money that was in the line item that didn't get used. Moving forward, it appears that you are using more of the state funds that we award to you. You're returning less. So of course, it's not guaranteed that these funds will continue into the future. Therefore, instead of kind of adding them to your grant as part of an overall, as your overall award, which we would then have to cut in following years, we are doing this as incentive funds. Now, the process will be an amendment to your grant, so it will be additional funds in your grant, but it is not part of your general grant award. This is just kind of saying, hey, you're doing a good job. Here's some additional funds for this year. We will be determining which agencies get incentive funds and how much based on the data that you have entered in eData as of 12/31/23. So I will say that I ran my access template about 2 days ago, and we still have several agencies that either have 0% contracted enrollment or have below, say, 15% contracted enrollment. I'm going to be generous and assume that that is because you are non-compliant with the data entry policy and not that you actually don't have any students in your programs at this point. So if you have not been entering data on a regular basis. You definitely want to get caught up, both for compliance as well as for potentially getting incentive funds. The majority of you are up to date on your data entry. Thank you very much. Please continue entering your data and make sure you remain up to date through 12/31. I will say that, you know, if I think 12/31 is a reasonable date because you don't tend to get a whole lot of people in the last 2 weeks of the calendar year. But if you do have some attendance within those 14 days before 12/31, I would recommend that you do your best to get them in there, because we will be pulling the data on January 1st or 2nd. The criteria that we're going to be using, there's 2 parts to it. The first will be looking at progress towards meeting your contracted enrollment. And these numbers may have to change depending on how many of you get what level, and how much money ends up really being available to us. But at this point, I anticipate that if you are somewhere between 50 and 55% of your contracted enrollment, which is really where you should be at the end of December, the incentive funds will be 1% of the grant amount. If we can do it, if there's enough funding, it would be, so for your 064 grantees, it would be 1% of your overall grant amount, not just the state funds. For family literacy, it would be 1% of your family literacy. I will say that the tutoring program and the IELCE programs will not be getting incentive funds. Tutoring programs are small, and all of you could potentially be getting incentive funds under 064, and 061 grantees is a separate pot of funding. There is no state funding associated with that. Then 2% of your grant amount if you're 55 to 65%, and for those of you who are at 65% plus, will get 3%, we anticipate. Now, of course, enrollment is just one part of what you're doing. We don't want you to bring in a whole bunch of people, but have student churn, right? We don't want your students to be coming in, hitting 12 hours and then leaving. So the other part of the incentive funds will be a flat dollar amount per student who achieves an EFL gain or a high school equivalency attainment. What that dollar amount is at this point, I don't know, because it will depend somewhat on the number of students who reach these outcomes, as well as the funding, the incentive funds related to contracted enrollment. I would anticipate somewhere around $500 per student potentially, but it really does depend on how much funding we have available, and how that gets distributed. Next slide, please. So the use of the incentive funds, they are, even though it's not part of your general grant award, it's not a special pot of money. It is the regular Act 143 funds. So whatever is allowable with your regular grant funds would be allowable with incentive funds. However, we do strongly encourage you to use it for the benefit of the staff who are helping your agency succeed and the students. I would prefer not to see it go to, say, rent and administrative costs. So some of the options are, you could provide incentive compensation for staff. That is an allowable use of funds, provided you have a policy and plan for this. So letting you know now, so that if you need to implement a policy or plan, that you can talk about it and get that implemented. I know that we very often have, especially part-time staff, tutors, others who would like to attend the PACE conference, but with registration and travel costs, and your regular grant funds, you might be limited in the number of individuals that you can send. So we'd encourage you to use some of the funds to send staff to the PACE conference. If you have staff who would be interested in attending other job-related conferences, such as the Workforce Development Association's conference or other such conferences, you could use it for that. Additional investments in instructional technology. I know many programs are discovering the use of OWLs, I believe they're called, to support high flex instruction. They're an investment in technology that'll really support you to be able to provide remote instruction and to help students participate in that remote instruction. And then, I know there's a tradition in adult education. We try to do more with less, and so very often we have classroom sets of textbooks, but students don't necessarily get textbooks to keep. And so purchasing textbooks or other supplies to support the students, those would all be very good and allowable uses of funds. I do want to point out that under the uniform grant guidance, that formal commencement convocation type activities are not an allowable use of funds. But I heard someone say they kind of buy small things and give certificates to students who have success in their programs, and those would be allowed. So those are the incentive funds. Next slide, please. We also have additional state funds. So our line item saw an increase for 23-24 for the first time in many years. This I do anticipate will be ongoing funding, right? So that I am making the assumption that we will continue to get at least this amount of money in next several years, and therefore giving you an increase this year will be able to continue as we move forward in the rest of your grant cycles. So the first usage that I anticipate is an increase for family literacy that mirrors what we did with federal funds for the 064 grantees for 23-24. So we kind of looked at, we had certain criteria and different agencies got, $5, $10, $15,000 increase from last year to this year in the federal 064 grant based on progress towards certain criteria. We would look at those same criteria for family literacy and give you the commensurate increase for this year and moving forward. We were not able to do it last year because we did it with the federal funds. Family literacy only has state funds. Now that we have the additional state funds, we'll be able to provide additional funds to you. Beyond that, I am not planning to distribute these additional funds evenly. It's not like everybody's going to get a percentage increase. The reason is because many of you are already returning state funds, and so I'm not sure there's much use in giving you additional funds. Also, I would like to use these funds for very specific purposes. And these are the purposes that I presented to my administration for reasons that we needed additional funds. These ideas have also been presented to legislators in hearings and such. So these are the priorities. We will come up with a process by which you can request additional funds. I am presenting them to you now so that you can begin thinking about it. For practical purposes, we will be handling additional state funds together with the incentive funds kind of at the same time, because both of those will require an amendment. I believe it's called a funding adjustment in your grant, in eGrants, which will require you to redo your budgets and us to review the budgets. So we're going to do this all at one time to minimize the amount of additional work for both you and the advisors. So first priority after increasing for family literacy is for you to convert part-time positions to full-time positions with benefits for those positions that are providing direct services to students. So many of you, by far the majority of your positions for teachers are part-time teachers. I would like to see more full-time teachers with benefits. So looking at existing part-time teachers who would be interested in full-time instruction and giving them a full-time position with benefits. Same with your student support coordinators. Now, right now you might have someone who teaches a little bit and is a little bit of a student support coordinator. And can we kind of split that position and have a full-time teacher and a full-time student support coordinator? And though I missed much of the prior, your colleagues' presentations, it really sounded like that a lot of what was happening there was support from dedicated student support coordinators, specialists, case managers, whatever you want to call them, to work, to really be able to commit all of their time to working with students to support them in retention and reaching their outcomes. There are programs that have a large number of full-time teachers, but the pay isn't necessarily very good. Same with student support staff. So we will consider proposals to increase the pay for existing full-time teachers and student support staff. And then there are programs who have approached us and said that they're seeing an influx of students and they just don't have enough funding to meet the needs of all of the students. So we will also consider proposals to add additional full-time teachers to deal with the increased, that would come along with increased contracted enrollment to support those additional students. So you can begin thinking about how you might want to use additional funds. For those of you who have frequently returned fairly significant state funds, please sit down and consider how you could, for example, create a full-time position with benefits for a teacher that so that instead of returning money because you have a lot of turnover for part-time teachers, or your teacher is only paid when you have classes, things like that, you can have a dedicated position and that person is there full time, and so you're less likely to return those. But you're going to want to kind of combine the funds that you frequently return together with new funds to come up with the budget. I believe there was
there's a question in the chat. Yeah, there's a question in the chat. They want to know if they could add a second full-time case manager because they only have one supporting 300 students.
Yes, that would, yeah, I would consider that as well, yeah.
And that would not come with increased contracted enrollment?
No.
Okay. So there you go, Cindy. Do we have any other questions?
Although I have to say, if somebody's, asking for a whole lot of additional money, we might have to kind of look at a little bit of an increased contracted enrollment, but we're not saying, like, okay, when we had the competition, it was, I think, 2250, you proposed a certain contracted enrollment that led to a certain cost per student. And if you get this much more money, we're going to divide it by your original cost per student, and you have to serve that many more students. We do not intend to do that in any way. This really is about increasing your program's capacity to fully serve the students that you're currently serving. If you do believe that you want to serve more students, we would like to see that done by having additional full-time teachers. But if you would like an additional full-time case manager, since that would be serving current students, we wouldn't necessarily require increased contracted enrollment.
So we're at time, but could we go to the next slide really quickly and then we'll come back to questions?
Yes, sorry. Yes.
Yeah.
So there's no webinar in December. The next webinar will be January 18th at 11 a.m. Christine, do you want to talk about the topic?
Sure. So the topic that we're going to cover in the January webinar relates to partnerships. all kinds of partnerships, not just, not just your WIOA partners. So if you have something, that you really think has worked for you, we'd love for you to be one of our presenters, and you can contact your advisor about that. And once again, the request for sort of help with partnerships came out of the surveys, the evaluations at the end of the kickoff. So this was asked for by, some of you.
And a final point related to the webinars. If you have staff members who would like to have the monthly webinar on their calendar, but they were not on our program contact list. If you open the series, if you open the Outlook invite and you open the series, not the occurrence, you can forward that to them, and they should be able to have the whole thing on the calendar. That tends to add them to my Outlook as well, so that when I send the email with the PowerPoints or anything like that, that they'll receive them. I am willing to stay on if people have more questions. This is not the only time you'll get information about the incentive funds. So I'll send out more formal documentation once we've gotten everything finalized. This was just a chance to let you know so that you could begin thinking about things and having the conversations you need to have internally to prepare for an official proposal.
So for those of you that are still here, if anyone has a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question now. Okay, well, I don't see anything in the chat and nobody's unmuting. So I'm gonna thank everyone for attending. I'm gonna stop the recording. And we'll see you in January.
Yes, and happy Thanksgiving, and